The night air over Los Angeles felt thick, like a blanket of unseen tension wrapping itself around our sprawling mansion in the Hollywood Hills. The celebration for Damien's latest business triumph was in full swing, with the champagne flowing as freely as the laughter echoing across the marble floors. Yet, amidst the glittering soiree, something felt amiss. It was Evelyn, my mother-in-law. She had always been a woman of elegance and wit, commanding attention with her sharp tongue and effortless charm. But tonight, there was something different about the way she hovered around Damien, her fingers brushing his arm just a beat too long, her laughter a pitch too high at his jokes. "Darling, is everything okay?" My best friend, Clara, whispered, catching my distracted gaze. I forced a smile, brushing it off as paranoia. But the unease lingered. Evelyn had always been flirtatious, but this was new, a shade darker, more deliberate. I pushed the thoughts aside, chalking them up to my imagination. Yet, a week later, Damien's behavior shifted. His late-night meetings became more frequent. His phone seemed glued to his hand, and his once effortless transparency turned opaque. My husband had always been a fortress, stoic, unshakable, but now cracks began to show. And what lay beneath was something I wasn't prepared for. It was a fluke that I stumbled upon the emails. Damien had left his laptop open, something he never did. At first, I hesitated, prying wasn't my style. But a subject line caught my eye. "For your eyes only." The exchange was between Damien and Evelyn. What started as mundane discussions about family investments quickly turned personal. Her words dripped with manipulation. "I'm only thinking of what's best for you and your daughter's future. You know I'm the only one who truly understands you." I felt my stomach churn. Was Evelyn trying to undermine our marriage? Or worse, was Damien falling for it? Seeds of doubt when I confronted Damien. His reaction was swift and defensive. "You're being ridiculous," he snapped, slamming his laptop shut. "Evelyn's just trying to help us." "Help us?" I spat back, unable to mask the incredulity in my voice. "She's overstepping. Don't tell me you don't see that." But Damien stonewalled me, retreating into the shell of a man I barely recognized. And so the chasm between us widened. Desperate for clarity, I turned to Clara. Over margaritas and midnight tears, I poured out my suspicions. Clara, ever the pragmatist, urged me to dig deeper. "You need proof, love. If you confront him without it, he'll just twist things around," she said, her sharp green eyes filled with determination. The idea of surveillance felt alien to me, but the alternative, living in ignorance, was worse. That's how I found myself tailing Damien one Friday night. The setup: he had told me he had a meeting with investors downtown. Instead, I watched as he pulled into the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. My pulse raced as I parked discreetly, my hands trembling against the wheel. Moments later, a figure emerged from the shadows. Evelyn. She was dressed to kill in a sleek, crimson gown that clung to her figure, a far cry from her usual conservative style. My heart dropped as I watched her saunter inside. Was it really happening? I waited, torn between storming in and maintaining the facade. But just as I reached for the door handle, Damien appeared. He was alone, standing under the hotel's grand awning, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the streetlights. He was holding a phone, speaking urgently into it. Then he turned and walked back to his car, leaving Evelyn behind. The situation had taken a bizarre turn, and I needed answers. Unmasking intentions later that night, Damien came home, his face betraying a mix of exhaustion and resolve. Before I could confront him, he spoke. "I know you've been suspicious," he began, his tone calm but strained. "And you're right. There's something going on with Evelyn." My heart leapt into my throat, but his next words took me by surprise. "She's been trying to manipulate me," he admitted. "Ever since my father passed, she's been angling for control. But I've been onto her from the start." Damien revealed that he had been documenting Evelyn's actions for months. Her so-called financial advice was a cover for her attempts to siphon money from our accounts. "I let her think I was playing along," he said. But tonight was the last straw. She asked me to meet her at the hotel. Said she had an investment opportunity. I knew it was a trap. The relief was fleeting as his words sank in. Evelyn wasn't just a meddling mother-in-law. She was a calculated adversary. And Damien had been playing a dangerous game of shadows to protect us. Twists in the tale. Just as we were beginning to process the magnitude of Evelyn's betrayal, Damien's phone buzzed. It was a message from her. "We need to talk. I think your wife suspects something." I couldn't help but laugh at the irony. Evelyn had underestimated me, and Damien. Over the next few days, we worked together to compile the evidence. Damien's recordings, the emails, and even financial records painted a damning picture. But the real twist came when our lawyer discovered something shocking. Evelyn had been embezzling from Damien's father's estate for decades. "She's been funneling money into offshore accounts," the lawyer explained. "And she's been doing it under both of your names." The revelation left us reeling. Evelyn's scheme was far more elaborate than we had imagined. And now, we were caught in the middle of a scandal that threatened to engulf our entire family. This was just the beginning of our fight to reclaim control. But one thing was clear: Evelyn wasn't going down without a fight. With Evelyn's scheme exposed, the days that followed were a whirlwind of legal battles, whispered conversations, and mounting tension. Damien and I had always been a power couple, at least in the eyes of our social circle. Now, behind closed doors, we were navigating a labyrinth of betrayal that threatened to unravel everything we'd built. Evelyn strikes back. Evelyn, true to form, didn't crumble under the weight of our discovery. Instead, she leaned into her role as the wounded matriarch. She flooded Damien's inbox with teary apologies, conveniently omitting her financial treachery, and turned to mutual acquaintances, spinning tales of misunderstandings and family strife. One afternoon, Clara called, her voice dripping with barely contained fury. "Evelyn's been telling anyone who'll listen that you've brainwashed Damien," she said. "Apparently, you're jealous of their bond." I almost choked on my coffee. "She said what?" "Yeah," Clara continued. "She's painting herself as some selfless mother figure, just trying to help her son, only to be vilified by his overbearing wife. It's soap opera gold." While Evelyn's charm worked on some, others were less convinced. Damien's lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Valerie, quickly gathered a mountain of evidence to counter Evelyn's theatrics. The offshore accounts alone were damning, but the cherry on top was a recording of Evelyn confessing her intentions to Damien in a moment of carelessness. A family divided. The fallout extended beyond Damien and me. Evelyn's actions sent shockwaves through the family. Damien's younger brother, Eric, had always been closer to their mother, but even he couldn't ignore the mounting evidence against her. "You know how she is," Eric said when Damien confronted him. "She's manipulative, sure, but she's still our mom." Damien's eyes hardened. "She's a thief, Eric. She's been stealing from Dad's estate for years, and now she's trying to sabotage my marriage." Eric scoffed. "Marriage? Or business partnership? You two treat each other like co-CEOs." That stung more than it should have. Eric's words were a painful reminder of how our relationship had evolved, or devolved, over the years. When Eric stormed out, Damien turned to me, his expression uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Am I losing everyone?" he asked quietly. "No," I said, taking his hand. "You still have me." A dangerous proposition. While we braced ourselves for the legal battle ahead, Evelyn pulled another card from her deck. One night, Damien received a late-night call. It was Evelyn, sobbing and frantic. Against my better judgment, I urged him to take it. "Damien, I'm begging you," she cried. "Don't let this go to court. It'll destroy the family." "What do you want, Evelyn?" Damien asked, his voice cold. She hesitated, then said, "Let's settle this privately. I'll return the money, every cent, but only if you drop the restraining order and keep this quiet." The offer was tempting. A public court case would tarnish not just Evelyn but the entire family. Yet, as Damien relayed the conversation to me, I couldn't shake the feeling that her sudden contrition was another ruse. We can't trust her, I said firmly. If we settle, she'll just find another way to worm back in. Damien nodded, but I could see the hesitation in his eyes. This wasn't just about money for him, it was about principle. And Evelyn knew exactly how to exploit that. The past resurfaces amid the chaos. An unexpected visitor arrived at our doorstep. Evelyn's former business partner, Richard. He was a gaunt man with a nervous energy, but his information was invaluable. She did the same thing to me, Richard revealed, his voice trembling. We were partners in a real estate venture. She embezzled funds and left me to clean up the mess. Richard's story mirrored ours in chilling detail. Evelyn's modus operandi was clear. Charm, manipulate, and betray. With his testimony, our case against her grew stronger. But it also unearthed a new twist. Evelyn had used Damien's name in the fraudulent ventures, further entangling us in her web of deceit. She's been setting you up as a scapegoat, Richard warned. If this goes public, it could ruin you too. The implications were staggering. Evelyn wasn't just a manipulative mother-in-law. She was a calculated con artist, and we were her latest pawns. A dangerous ally. Desperate times called for desperate measures. Clara, ever the loyal friend, suggested an unorthodox solution. Confronting Evelyn directly, away from the lawyers and the courtrooms. She's a narcissist, Clara reasoned. She thrives on control. Take that away, and she'll crumble. I was skeptical but desperate. So one evening, Damien and I arranged a meeting with Evelyn at a neutral location. A secluded cafe on the outskirts of the city. When she arrived, her demeanor was icy yet composed. So you've decided to stop playing games, she said, sliding into the booth. No games, Evelyn, Damien said firmly. This ends now. You're going to return the money and disappear from our lives. Evelyn laughed. A sharp, humorless sound. Disappear? Darling, I'm the reason you have a life to begin with. Don't you dare forget that. Her arrogance was infuriating, but I kept my composure. This isn't a negotiation, I said. We have enough evidence to bury you. For the first time, Evelyn faltered, but her next words sent a chill down my spine. You think you've won? She said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You have no idea what I'm capable of. The storm ahead as we left the cafe. I couldn't shake the feeling that we had poked a sleeping dragon. Evelyn wasn't the type to go down quietly, and her cryptic warning felt more like a promise. That night, as Damien and I reviewed the evidence for the 100th time, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email, an anonymous message containing photos of Damien at the hotel with Evelyn. The caption read, "Are you sure he's innocent?" The sender's identity was masked, but the implication was clear. Evelyn wasn't just fighting back. She was launching a full-scale attack. The battle was far from over, and I couldn't help but wonder, how many more secrets would surface before this was done? The anonymous email shook me to my core. The pictures of Damien and Evelyn at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel were damning, despite knowing the context. Someone was trying to rewrite the narrative, casting doubt on Damien's loyalty to me. I showed him the email that night, the glow of my phone illuminating the tension etched on his face. This is her, I said, my voice shaking. She's trying to turn this around. Damien's jaw tightened. We knew she'd fight back. But if she's willing to fabricate this, there's no telling what else she has planned. We decided to hand everything over to Valerie, our lawyer. She was relentless, dissecting the images and metadata, eventually confirming that they were heavily doctored. But the damage was done. Evelyn had planted seeds of suspicion. The whispers among our social circles grew louder. A web of lies. The following week was chaos. Gossip blogs began circulating the photos with salacious headlines. Hollywood power couple rocked by scandal. Husband caught in hotel rendezvous with mother-in-law. Damien's busy Evelyn, predictably, played the victim. She gave a tearful interview to a small tabloid, painting herself as a misunderstood woman who had simply been trying to help her son. She even hinted at marital discord, implying that Damien had confided in her about our troubled relationship. "She's spinning a narrative," Valerie said during an emergency meeting. "If we don't counter it soon, public opinion will turn against you." The problem was that fighting Evelyn's smear campaign would inevitably drag our private lives into the spotlight. And that was a risk Damien and I weren't sure we wanted to take. A broken alliance, Eric, Damien's brother, became an unexpected pawn in Evelyn's game. Despite their strained relationship, she managed to pull him back into her orbit. One evening, he showed up at our house, visibly torn. "She's desperate," he said, pacing the living room. "She told me she's being blackmailed, that if she doesn't go through with this, someone will ruin her completely." I folded my arms, skeptical. "And you believe her?" Eric hesitated. "I don't know. She's manipulative, sure, but I've never seen her this scared." Damien cut in, his tone icy. "She's scared because she's losing, and now she's dragging you into her mess. Don't let her make you a part of this." Eric left that night without saying much, but his conflicted expression haunted me. Evelyn was pulling every string she could, and it was clear she had more cards to play. An unexpected confession, the next twist, came from a source I never anticipated. Evelyn's former lover, Richard, the same man who had initially tipped us off to her schemes. He showed up at Valerie's office with a stack of documents that changed everything. "She's not just embezzling," Richard revealed. "She's laundering money through fake charities. And she's using your names to do it." The evidence was staggering. Evelyn had set up several shell organizations, claiming they were philanthropic ventures under the family's banner. Funds from these organizations had been funneled into her offshore accounts, leaving a trail that implicated Damien and me as co-conspirators. "This is bigger than I thought," Valerie admitted, scanning the documents. "If this goes public, it won't just ruin Evelyn. It could destroy your reputations too." The revelation sent us spiraling. Evelyn wasn't just fighting for survival. She was ensuring that if she went down, she wouldn't go alone. A dangerous gamble. Desperate to outmaneuver Evelyn, we devised a risky plan. Damien would confront her directly, offering a deal: full disclosure of her crimes in exchange for immunity from legal action. It was a gamble, but it was the only way to untangle ourselves from her web. The meeting was set at a private location, an empty boardroom in one of Damien's office buildings. I watched from a nearby room, my heart pounding as Damien faced off with his mother. "You've backed us into a corner," Damien began, his voice steady but firm. "But this ends now. You come clean, or I'll make sure you're prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." Evelyn, to her credit, didn't flinch. "You think you're so clever," she said, her tone dripping with disdain. "But you're forgetting one thing. I know where all the bodies are buried." Her words sent a chill down my spine. Damien didn't falter. "Then bury me too. But you won't touch my family." For the first time, Evelyn's mask slipped. She looked genuinely rattled. But instead of conceding, she leaned in and said, "You're just like your father, always playing the hero. And look where it got him." Her cryptic statement hung in the air as she walked out, leaving Damien and me to grapple with a new question. What did she mean about his father? The family secret. The next day, we received a package. It was unmarked, containing a single flash drive. When we plugged it into Damien's laptop, the truth came pouring out. The files revealed a hidden chapter of the family's history. Damien's father had been involved in shady dealings, including some of the same schemes Evelyn was now orchestrating. But unlike her, he had tried to make amends, using his wealth to quietly repay stolen funds before his untimely death. "This is what she's been hiding," Damien said, his voice barely above a whisper. "She's been covering up his tracks for years, and now she's dragging us into it." The revelation added a new layer of complexity. Evelyn wasn't just a manipulative thief. She was a woman desperate to protect a legacy, no matter the cost. The fallout. Armed with the flash drive, Damien and I made a decision. We would go public. It was the only way to clear our names and expose Evelyn's web of lies. But we knew the fallout would be devastating. As we prepared for the storm ahead, Damien turned to me one night and said, "I don't know what's going to happen, but whatever it is, we face it together." It was a small moment of solace in the chaos, a reminder that, despite everything, we were still a team. And with that, we braced ourselves for the next battle, knowing that Evelyn wouldn't go down without taking one last swing. Going public wasn't a decision Damien and I took lightly. With Evelyn's schemes exposed, the fallout promised to be a firestorm of scandal and scrutiny. The morning our story broke, the headlines were explosive. Hollywood mogul's family feud, betrayal, fraud, and secret offshore accounts. We had carefully curated the narrative, working with Valerie and a PR crisis team to ensure the truth came to light without incriminating ourselves. The flash drive's revelations played a crucial role, painting Damien's father as a man who had attempted to right his wrongs, though Evelyn's continued machinations proved she had no such intentions. But Evelyn wasn't going down quietly. Evelyn's last stand hours after the story broke, Evelyn gave an exclusive interview to a high-profile talk show host. Dressed in somber tones, she leaned heavily into her practiced vulnerability. "I made mistakes," she confessed, her voice quivering just enough to sound genuine. "But everything I did was for my family. Damien and his wife have twisted this into something it's not because they've always resented me." Her words were calculated, a mix of half-truths and outright lies. She even brought up the photos from the Beverly Wilshire Hotel, claiming they were proof of Damien's betrayal and my paranoia. The interview sent social media into a frenzy. Hashtags like #DamienExposed and #EvelynTheVictim began trending, dividing public opinion. But we had anticipated this move. Turning the tide, Valerie orchestrated a counterstrike, a press conference where Damien and I presented the evidence in painstaking detail. The recordings, emails, and financial documents laid bare Evelyn's long history of deceit. We even included Richard's testimony and proof that the photos from the hotel had been doctored. The piece de resistance was a video clip of Evelyn confessing her schemes to Damien during one of their meetings. In it, her arrogance was on full display. "Do you think anyone will believe you over me? I've been the darling of this family for decades." The press ate it up. By the end of the day, the tide had turned in our favor. News outlets pivoted their coverage, painting Evelyn as a master manipulator who had finally met her match. A new threat just as we thought we had gained the upper hand. A new twist emerged. Eric, Damien's estranged brother, resurfaced with allegations of his own. In a televised interview, he accused Damien of knowing about Evelyn's schemes all along. "He's not as innocent as he claims," Eric said, his expression bitter. "He turned a blind eye for years because he benefited from it too." The accusation hit us like a freight train. Eric's motivations were unclear. Was he truly convinced of Damien's guilt, or had Evelyn coerced him? Either way, it gave Evelyn ammunition. The next morning, Damien received a text from her. "See? Blood always runs thicker. You can't win." The family crumbles, the pressure was mounting. Damien's business partners were growing increasingly uneasy, and investors began pulling out of major projects. Even Clara, my ever-loyal confidant, admitted that the constant scrutiny was taking its toll. "I'm with you, no matter what," she said, her tone uncharacteristically subdued. "But this fight is costing you everything. Is it worth it?" I didn't have an answer. Damien and I had been so focused on exposing Evelyn that we hadn't stopped to consider what winning would look like, or if it was even possible. An unexpected ally in the midst of the chaos. Richard reached out with another bombshell. He had discovered a hidden safe deposit box belonging to Evelyn. Inside were documents that not only detailed her fraudulent activities, but also implicated Eric in a money laundering scheme. "She's been using him as a pawn," Richard explained. "He's in deeper than he realizes." The revelation gave us leverage. Damien confronted Eric, presenting the evidence and giving him a choice: cooperate with us or face legal repercussions. Eric, cornered and furious, lashed out. "You think you're any better? You're just as ruthless as she is." But ultimately, he agreed to testify against Evelyn. His cooperation strengthened our case, but it came at a cost. Whatever fragile bond remained between the brothers was shattered beyond repair. The courtroom showdown, the trial, was a spectacle, drawing national attention. Evelyn, ever the performer, arrived each day impeccably dressed, her demeanor poised and unbothered. But as the prosecution laid out its case, cracks began to show. The recordings and documents were damning, but it was Eric's testimony that delivered the final blow. His account of how Evelyn had manipulated him into participating in her schemes painted a chilling portrait of her ruthlessness. When the verdict came, it was swift and decisive. Evelyn was found guilty on multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. She was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison, with additional restitution payments required to repay the stolen funds. Aftermath, the legal victory brought a sense of closure, but it didn't erase the damage. Damien's relationship with his brother was irreparably broken, and the scandal had taken a toll on his business. While some investors returned, others remained wary, leaving us to rebuild from the ground up. As for Evelyn, she maintained her innocence even as she was led away in handcuffs. Her parting words to Damien and me were chilling. "You may have won this round, but don't think for a second that you're rid of me." Moving forward months later, life began to regain a semblance of normalcy. Damien and I focused on our daughter, determined to shield her from the fallout as much as possible. Clara remained a steadfast support, helping me navigate the emotional aftermath. One evening, as Damien and I sat on the balcony overlooking the city, he turned to me and said, "We survived." I nodded, though the scars of the battle were still fresh. "Barely." He reached for my hand, his grip firm. "But we're stronger for it." It was a small comfort, but it was enough. For now, the storm had passed. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Evelyn's shadow would linger long after her prison sentence was over. The months following Evelyn's sentencing were a quiet storm of recovery and reflection. On the surface, life seemed to return to normal, but beneath it all, the cracks ran deep. Damien and I were rebuilding, but Evelyn's shadow loomed over us, a specter that refused to fade. A new beginning. Damien and I focused on stabilizing his business. The scandal had left a gaping hole in his reputation, but with Valerie's strategic guidance and a few loyal allies, he managed to claw his way back. Investors slowly trickled in, reassured by his transparency and resolve. Our personal life was harder to mend. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild, even when it's not between you and your spouse but rather the world around you. Every dinner party, every social event was tinged with the faint whispers of Evelyn's betrayal. "It's like she's still here," Damien said one night as we sat in our living room, the city lights twinkling outside. "Even from prison, she's managed to haunt us." I squeezed his hand. "We'll outlast her. We already have." An unwelcome reminder, but Evelyn wasn't finished. One day, a letter arrived, unsigned, but unmistakably hers. The handwriting, the tone, the veiled threats all pointed to her. "You think you've won, but I always have another move. Enjoy your hollow victory while it lasts." Damien tore the letter in half, but the damage was done. Evelyn's reach, even behind bars, was relentless. The paranoia returned with a vengeance. Every unfamiliar number that called Damien's phone, every odd glance from a stranger, felt like Evelyn's doing. Valerie suggested hiring a private investigator to monitor Evelyn's activities. We learned that she had managed to charm a few inmates and even a guard, using them to smuggle out communications. It was infuriating, but also a grim reminder of her ingenuity. The family legacy amid Evelyn's lingering presence, another layer of her deceit unraveled. As we sorted through more of her hidden financial dealings, we discovered a trust fund she had established in our daughter's name. At first, it seemed like a rare act of altruism, but a closer look revealed her true intent. The fund was structured in a way that would tie our daughter to Evelyn legally and financially for years to come. "This woman doesn't know when to stop," I said, slamming the papers onto the table. "She's trying to control our daughter now?" Valerie assured us we could dissolve the trust, but it required navigating a maze of legal red tape. It was another reminder that Evelyn's machinations had far-reaching consequences, ones we were only beginning to uncover. A glimmer of hope despite the chaos. There were moments of light. Damien and I threw ourselves into creating a sense of normalcy for our daughter. We took her to the beach, attended her school events, and tried to shield her from the lingering fallout. Clara remained a steadfast friend, her sharp wit a balm in the darkest moments. One evening, as we shared a bottle of wine on the balcony, she said, "You know, you could write a book about this. How to Survive a Sociopathic Mother-in-Law. It'd be a bestseller." I laughed, the first genuine laugh in weeks. Maybe one day, but for now I just want peace. Evelyn's final play, The Peace, didn't last. A month after the letter, Damien received a visit from an FBI agent. Apparently, Evelyn had implicated him in yet another scheme, this time involving an old business partner of his father. The claims were baseless, but they were enough to trigger an investigation. "I can't believe this," Damien said, his face pale as he relayed the news. "She's still trying to drag me down." The investigation put everything on hold. Damien's business, our personal lives, even our daughter's school tuition payments were scrutinized. The stress was unbearable, but we knew we had to weather it. The turning point in a surprising twist, it was Eric who came to our aid. Despite our fractured relationship, he provided a crucial piece of evidence. A series of emails between Evelyn and the business partner, proving that Damien had no involvement in the alleged scheme. "I'm not doing this for you," Eric said when Damien thanked him. "I'm doing it because she deserves to rot for what she's done to all of us." The investigation was dropped, and Evelyn's latest attempt to sabotage us failed. But the damage to her credibility within the prison system was significant. She lost the privileges and influence she had worked so hard to cultivate. Moving forward as Evelyn's grip weakened, Damien and I began to feel a sense of freedom we hadn't experienced in years. We sold the Hollywood Hills mansion, a place too full of painful memories, and moved to a quieter neighborhood. Damien's business began to thrive again, and our daughter flourished in her new school. One evening, as we unpacked boxes in our new home, Damien turned to me and said, "I think we finally did it. We're free." I smiled, the weight on my shoulders lifting. "For now. But if she ever comes back..." He cut me off with a kiss. "We'll handle it. Together." Epilogue. Evelyn's endgame. Years later, news of Evelyn's death reached us. She had suffered a heart attack in prison. Despite everything, there was a strange sense of loss. Not for Evelyn herself, but for the idea of what she could have been if she hadn't let greed and manipulation consume her. In her will, Evelyn left one final twist. A letter addressed to our daughter, filled with apologies and justifications for her actions. We debated whether to give it to her, ultimately deciding to keep it hidden until she was old enough to understand the complexity of her grandmother's legacy. As Damien and I stood together, watching the sunset from our new home, I felt a sense of closure. Evelyn had tried to destroy us, but in the end we had emerged stronger, scarred, yes, but unbroken. "Here's to the future," Damien said, raising a glass of wine. "To us," I replied, clinking my glass against his. And with that, we closed the chapter on Evelyn, ready to write a new story, one of hope, resilience, and unshakable love.